थैंक यू अरविंद एंड किशु, आप दोनों का शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ. आई विल वैसिलेट बिटवीन इंग्लिश एंड हिंदी. दी इंसिडेंट्स, ये जो घटनाएं हिशु ने हम सभी को बताया, दीज इंसिडेंट्स आर नॉट इंसिडेंट्स इन आइसोलेशन. अनफॉर्चुनेटली दे आर द नॉर्म. And the changes are happening, but they are at a very, very, very slow pace. The change that's happening is more happening at the optical level to grab media headlines. I'm not saying that this kind of tokenistic change must not happen. It's only when, I wouldn't say only, but it's when such tokenistic change happens. नाम के वास्ते भी हो, अगर अच्छे बदलाव नाम के वास्ते भी लाएं तो उसी उन्हीं के ज़रिए सरकारों को सवाल हम कर पा सकते हैं, क्योंकि उनका बहुत कुछ वो कहते हैं कि अलग अलग सरकारें, राज्य और केंद्र सरकारें, and it's one way to get them to account. Now, the topic being the right to love, the use of criminal law to police trans persons, and across queer couples, with women who've fallen in love with women, with men who've fallen in love with men as well. Not at a personal level, I haven't dealt with as many cases of the police separating men who've fallen in love with men as much. Perhaps they have, but it's just that I haven't dealt with them as much. What come to us are mostly cases of women falling in love with women, or persons assigned female at birth, trans persons, gender non-binary persons in love. And here, and even with trans women, very recently we had a trans woman who in a certain southern state committed suicide, in my own state committed suicide, because her partner, who decided to stay with her, had to go to his natal family for a certain festival, and the natal family house arrested that partner. So it's debatable whether this was the ploy of the partner, or if the natal family of the partner house arrested that person. But when the partner told the trans woman that he was house arrested and she went there, and then there was a police case, the police actually separated the trans woman from the partner, with the trans person getting to understand the unfortunate realities that the law almost always works strongly against the weak and weakly against the strong. So unfortunately, that trans person, that trans woman, committed suicide just about 2 weeks ago. She committed suicide, and as always, and I'm not trying to play that down, but factually, as always, there was another candlelight vigil, and then there were again placards, no more so and so, no more such deaths. And so these suicides are really not new. That's not to play down the trauma that the trans person faced, but what I'm trying to convey most inarticulately is that these have just been happening, and very little work has been done by me, or I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody else, but I think even those who are trying to work, this is like sometimes I feel, are we trying to boil the Atlantic Ocean on a kerosene stove? I can't imagine it any different. Are we trying to boil a huge ocean on a gas stove or a kerosene stove? Moving to trans women, and many of us know that trans women historically, traditionally, have largely been dependent on traditional transgender livelihoods, and from time to time many of our friends get booked under extortion, public nuisance, anti-beggary laws wherever many states yet have them, ITPA, Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act, IPC Section 370, which will now get fortified, I suppose, with the new Trafficking Act no sooner than it gets passed, with the powers of the state being taken away, and perhaps if it gets passed in its current form, with the National Investigative Agency being involved in such issues. So it will just fortify and stratify and put another layer of over the existing layers and layers of repression. Criminal law, which is required to empower, how criminal law is used to repress, is used to turn people helpless. Many speak very often of now that 377 got read down with the Nas judgment, people trace the history back to Kaushal, and then some further go within the NGO spaces, people further go back to 2009 to Nas. But very rarely, and I've barely heard any other than lawyers, LGBT lawyers or human rights lawyers, but who have some exposure to LGBT and transgender movements. Nobody talks about Jayalakshmi versus State of Tamil Nadu, and I'm so glad that our friend Grace took that up in the last, Transgender Day of Remembrance. It's just been, nobody even talks about it. Many within the community don't even know what Jayalakshmi versus State of Tamil Nadu is. Jayalakshmi was Pandiyamma, the year 2005-06, when Pandiyamma, barely 18-year-old transgender person, was booked on perhaps false cases of extortion, petty crimes, for which she had a bail order that was given to her, which required her to be there in the police station every day. हर रोज जाना था उनको दरोगा के पास पुलिस स्टेशन में, वो बेल का एक नियम था, और वहाँ वो सुबह जाती थी. In the morning she used to go at 8 and return at 12. This went on for months. Till a few months later, when her mother and sister insisted, and she broke down to tell them that I'm being sexually assaulted by constabulary and by some SIs in the police station, Vaisarapadi police station, Tamil Nadu. And when the mother and sister go there the next day, the police make passes at the sister. I'm not trying to generalize, but because unfortunately, sexual assault, sexual crimes are so ubiquitous in certain marginalized communities, where these communities get trampled by powerful state actors, that we've heard, I surely have heard trans people talk of sexual assault as something that happens on a regular basis, something as common as a mosquito bite. I'm sorry, but this is a lived reality for some. And how people figure out a way to deal with it. I'm not saying everybody does that. No two stories are alike. And in this case, one can only speculate, because I haven't met Pandiyamma face to face till date. We can only speculate what she may have gone through. But that day when the police made a pass at her sister, that was beyond her. It was just beyond her. Because this is not about getting violated, but getting your dear ones violated. So she doused herself with petrol and set herself ablaze. She died 1 week later in the government hospital. The police forces closed ranks very quickly to manage it. But thankfully, or for whatever reason, the government doctors stood by their word. And guess who the judge was on that bench in the Madras High Court? Guess who the judge was in the Madras High Court in 2005-06? No. Justice Shah, AP Shah, Ajit Prakash Shah. But we don't credit the fact that his crystallization of that judicial acumen and judicial humanity was erected on perhaps the funeral pyre of a Pandiyamma. So Nas didn't just fall out of heaven. Justice Shah may not have, I can only speculate because judges don't speak to the media as much. We can only speculate that these were the kind of cases of Pandiyamma, Jayalakshmi versus State of Tamil Nadu, this valiant, valorous sister who fought that case. And thankfully we have activists like Grace, activists like Shanta, Mumi, in Assam we have Swati, and so many other activists taking this up, and my sister Vikwaram, who in their strident voices keep reminding people of all of this. And then I'll quickly move on to bail conditions. Bail conditions, some of those, the way they're implemented, are monstrous for transgender communities. What happens during those bail visits? Many unmentionable, nasty instances of sexual assault happen. The court says to be present in the police station between 10 a.m. to 12. But that attendance is never marked between 10 a.m. to 12. Almost always or very often they say, "Hum to bandobast duty pe hai, sham ko aa jao, raat ko aa jao." And most of those bail appearances have to happen on a Sunday. Sunday evening, I wouldn't say all, but definitely some police stations become daru ki dukan. There is daru happening. And there's so much happening. Tob dikhao, kya hai, kaise karte ho, all that happens. And many people many of my friends say that we think we are doing pro bono sex work for the police. I mean, that's the way they want to deal with it, because they don't want to be understood as victims. They want to feel charitable, and they want to feel that they've given something for no money, pro bono sex work. Next, there are a certain section of transgender persons who are born in spaces where their biological fathers are not their socio-legal fathers. Their biological fathers are the dalals and dallas who sold their biological mothers into brothels. And when a child who's born into brothel is taught pimping as a skill by the elders at home, when a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old child is told that घर में खाना नहीं रहेगा जब तक 8 बजे 7-8 बजे आप वहाँ तुम्हें जाना होगा और वो भाई लोगों को अंकल लोगों को बुलाना है तभी तो घर में चूल्हा जलेगा. How is it the fault of that child? And eventually that child, most of our friends who are in female sex work, they want their children to be educated, they want their children to access employment, and eventually when they access employment, they may manage to become graduates and postgraduates, but when they manage to get into the private sector, how many jobs do we have in the public sector? Shrinking by the day with LPG. So when they go into the private sector, then there's this monstrosity of background check. How do you expect this person to clear the background check? What are you doing? The likes of ASSOCHAM, CII, FICCI. This is not reinventing the wheel. This is a low-hanging fruit. If the likes of Infosys Foundation, despite my disagreements with the way they deal with it, and the likes of Prajwala and Sunita Krishnan can have non-confidentiality agreements and what are they called? NDAs and something else. Disclosure, NDAs, non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements, MOUs signed, so that survivors of trafficking, no background checks can be run on them. Why can't they be done for trans persons? You're setting people up for failure. Where are the strong witness protection programs? I'm not telling you to copy-paste. Look around. These are not new things. You're not reinventing the wheel. If you're already doing it for survivors of trafficking who are being quote-unquote rehabilitated with all its problematic issues, can't something similar, if not identical, some reliefs be given as a right to transgender persons who want to come out of the systems? And lastly, I have a few more points actually. There are a whole series of judgments, and I'm not comfortable sharing the detail. I have these judgments, but I'm not comfortable sharing the details of this judgment on recording. But a 2-judge bench of a certain high court delivers a judgment separating queer couples who have their Aadhaar cards showing that they're well over 21. And if a queer couple incidentally happens to be a trans man, often trans men may appear lesser than their age. They may appear much lesser than their age. And a 2-judge bench has delivered a verdict despite the couple offering their Aadhaar, their voter ID, and their 10 certificates. And their 10 certificates that they're well above 21, not even 18. And the judgment says they appear to be minor. Bhaiya, based on what? Based on what do they appear minor to you? And they've been separated. Now it's so difficult to appeal this judgment to the Supreme Court because the lover is in captivity with a violent family. Appealing it to the Supreme Court would trigger, and it could lead to anything. So I don't want to share the details of which state or what the WP number and all that is, but and this is just not one case. There are many such cases. Some states have started, they've advertised, and there's a lot of media hype about queer, LGBT, transgender help desks set up by the police. But what's happening in these transgender and queer help desks? When such couples go to the help desk, more often than not, they are being separated, where they are told, oh, but your parents are going to collapse without you. And very often, persons assigned female at birth are raised in certain ways where they are told that the entire family will collapse. They're made to bear the burden of an entire family and made to feel responsible for whatever happens to the entire family. So the moment they see their biological parents, they crumble. So the police and the state law enforcement agencies are a long way away from playing a positive role, playing a trans affirmative role. Thank you.